Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to dive deep into the constitutional design of Singapore. We're going to unpack its pretty unique answer to one of the oldest puzzles in politics. And that puzzle really boils down to this one fundamental question. How do you control government power? Right? Every country needs a government that's strong enough to actually get things done, but you can't have it so strong that it can just do whatever it wants. It is a really, really delicate balancing act. Now, most of us are probably familiar with the idea of separation of powers. You know, the way it works in the United States, where the different branches of government are set up to check each other. But Singapore, like the UK, uses what's called the Westminster model, and that features a fusion of powers. This creates what's been called the central paradox. See, the executive branch, that's the cabinet, is drawn directly from the legislature, which is parliament. This means the very same people running the government also control the lawmaking body. That concentrates a huge amount of power. So how on earth do you check that? So, faced with this very puzzle, what did Singapore do? Well, its answer is where things get really interesting. Instead of creating a system where the different branches are in constant conflict, Singapore's constitutional culture really prefers to avoid that. The goal is consensus over contention. But that definitely doesn't mean power goes unchecked. The solution was to build a system of controls within the government itself, all designed to diffuse power before it gets too concentrated in one place. And the core concept here is something called an intra-branch check. You know, we often think about different branches checking each other. That's an inter-branch check. But an intra-branch check? That's when a branch of government basically polices itself. It's a form of internal regulation to make sure it doesn't step outside its constitutional lines. Okay, so how does this internal control actually work in practice? Well, Singapore uses two specific tools, and it uses them particularly within its very powerful executive branch. These two tools are called hard and soft diffusion. So hard diffusion, that's when you take a specific government power and you give it exclusively to an independent office. You completely wall it off from the political leadership. Soft diffusion, on the other hand, is when a power is so important that you share it, meaning you need more than one office to agree before anything can happen. All right, let's look at our first example of hard diffusion, the Office of the Attorney General. This is a classic case of taking one of the most sensitive powers of the state and just putting it completely out of political reach. And this quote from Chief Justice Menon just explains it perfectly. The power to prosecute someone, to decide who's going to face criminal charges, that's an executive power. But in Singapore, it is completely removed from the cabinet. It belongs only to the Attorney General, who is an independent, professional lawyer, not a politician. And this is crucial because it ensures decisions about who gets prosecuted are based on the law, not on politics. Okay, on to our second tool, soft diffusion. Here, the idea is that some powers are just so vital to the nation's survival that no single person or group should have the final say. And the best example of this is Singapore's elected president. You see, the elected president holds what are called custodial powers over Singapore's most strategic assets. So, as the fiscal guardian, the president can literally block the government from spending the nation's past financial reserves. As the public service custodian, the president has to approve key appointments, like the Chief Justice, making sure the civil service stays impartial. And the role even extends to having a say in certain security detentions. This is famously known as the two-key system. Think of it this way. The government holds the first key. It has the power to propose a budget or appoint a new Chief Justice. But, and this is a big but, for that decision to actually happen, the president has to agree and use the second key. Without the president's approval, that door stays locked. It's an incredibly powerful check that forces everyone to agree on the nation's most vital issues. So there you have it. Hard diffusion with the Attorney General and soft diffusion with the president. But this whole system of internal control doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It actually operates alongside the more traditional checks and balances, where the major branches of government are designed to keep an eye on each other. So what about Parliament? Well, as a place for debate, its role as a check is a little bit blunted by that fusion of powers we talked about. Because the cabinet comes from the majority party in Parliament, party discipline usually means the legislature and the executive move together, in lockstep. This often leaves the parliamentary opposition as the main voice for internal scrutiny. And that brings us to the judiciary and its most powerful tool, judicial review. This has been called the sharp edge that makes sure all government action is legal and stays within the boundaries set by the Constitution. It is the ultimate backstop. But the courts are also very aware of their own limits. This is what's so interesting. The judiciary is designed for retrospective adjudication. That means looking back at past events and judging them based on the law. The legislature, on the other hand, is built for prospective policymaking, deciding complex social and economic issues for the future. Courts are experts on what's legal, not necessarily on broad public policy. And this principle is captured so powerfully in this legal judgment. It's basically saying that a judge's job is to interpret the law as it's written, not to invent new laws based on their own opinions. If they did that, they'd be acting like a super legislature, which is totally undemocratic. This distinction is what upholds the rule of law, not the rule of judges. So after looking at all these structures, all these rules, we get to a final, really crucial metaphor that ties this whole thing together. The idea of governance as hardware versus software. The hardware is everything we've been talking about: the Constitution, the elected presidency, the courts, all the rules of diffusion. It's the machinery of the state. But even the best machine in the world is totally useless without good software. And the software? That's the quality of the people running the system. Their integrity, their sense of duty, their moral courage. And this is really the bottom line. As former Chief Justice Chan Sek-yong pointed out, you can have all the constitutional safeguards in the world to protect an independent judiciary, but real independence, at the end of the day, comes down to a judge's own character. The hardware makes it possible, but it's the software that delivers. And so that leaves all of us with a final, really big question to think about. In the grand puzzle of governance, what's ultimately more important? Designing a perfect system with flawless checks and balances? Or making sure you have principled leaders with the integrity to run it? It's a question every single nation, Singapore included, continues to grapple with.